So if you wanted to make a big pile of objects in Blender, how would you do it? What you could do is start with a cube. Say if you wanted a pile of cubes, you could just start, duplicating these like this, piling on top of each other. But if you want them to look more natural without like clipping into each other or like having any weird spaces, there are better ways of doing that. So basically what we're going to do is make a particle emitter and then turn all the particles into objects and then add physics to those objects. So for this one, I am going to start with a cube, and we're actually going to add a particle system to this. And this is just how we're going to spawn in all of the objects that we want. So go over here to particle properties and add a new particle system right here. We're going to leave this on emitter, and under source right here, we're going to change this from faces to volume. And we can't see anything right now because we just need to come over to viewport display and turn off show emitter. That way we can see through. I'm also going to do this under the render tab so that it doesn't render with the emitter being shown. And right now we only have one object in here, and this is just a halo right now, so it's just kind of like a placeholder. But it says right here 1000, and I want to see 1000. So for frame start, it's at 1, frame end is at 200. We just need to change the end to 1, and then they're all spawned in basically on the first frame. And then you can come over here to the number and just kind of control how many objects you want. So we could set this to like 100 if you only want 100 objects in here. And we don't want to keep these as halos, so I'm going to spawn in a cube just for the sake of keeping it low poly. And we're going to select our emitter, go over to render, render as. We want to change this to object, and we just want to select our cube. So now this is just a bunch of cubes. If you want to change the scale, you can change the scale in here. You can add some randomness to that. And if you want the rotation to be randomized a little, you just have to check rotation right here. And then you can turn randomize up a little, and it will, randomize the rotation. Instead of having the distribution set to jittered though, I'm actually going to turn this to grid. And this gives you a little more control to like keep things very uniform if you want them to be. If you wanted to, you could leave it like this. But I don't want it to be a big cube-shaped pile. So I'm actually going to tab into edit mode, hit 3 to go into face select, and I'm just going to scale the top down like this. So it's more like pile-shaped. It's closer to like a pyramid. And it will still kind of respect the basic like bounding box. So this is more pile-shaped now. And if you want fewer objects in here, you can just turn the resolution down to something smaller, like say 7 or 8. And randomize will basically just offset them from their original location. So I'm going to come in here, and under render, I'm just going to turn the scale up a little so they're closer to each other. And I'm also going to turn the scale randomness to maybe like 0.5. So we have some smaller ones mixed in there too. They're not all the same size. And I'm also going to randomize the rotation very slightly. Okay, now we want to add physics to these. And you might think that there are already physics applied because if you press spacebar, they'll start to fall. But these don't have any self-collision right now, and we want that. We don't want them to just fall through each other. So before we do that, I'm just going to add a plane, and this is what they're all going to land on. So I'm just going to place that right below it, scale it up, Control A to apply the scale. And over here, we're going to add some physics to it. I'm just going to choose a rigid body and change it to passive. And I'm just going to turn, under surface responses, I'm going to turn the friction just up all the way. And you can leave everything else the same. So next we want to turn all of these particles into their own objects. And before we do that, I'm just going to come over here, hover over the outliner and hit C to add a new collection. And all of these are supposed to be in the second collection right now. So we're just going to select our emitter over here, and then we're going to go to the modifier settings over here and hit convert. And you'll see it just turns all of those into their own objects. In our viewport over here, you can just hit M and then select collection 3, and it'll all put them into their own collection, just make things a little neater. And if you hit spacebar now, you'll see that we can still see our particles from our emitter right here. So you just want to hide that. So when you play, you don't have doubles of everything. So we just want to select all of these by right-clicking on the collection and select objects, and then we can control-click just the first one right here. So we have one active selection. And we want to add physics to that with a rigid body right here. You want to leave it set to active. Mass you can leave at that for now. Friction I'm going to turn up all the way. And then under dynamics, I'm just going to turn the damping, transition, and rotation just up to something a little higher like 0.5. And the reason I'm doing this is if you leave it set too low, the objects will kind of never stop moving. And obviously you want them to stop rolling and shifting eventually. So turning this up a little higher will help them kind of look a little more normal. So now if you press play, you'll see only one goes. We want to basically apply these to all of these objects right here. So to do that with the same selections, you go to Object, Rigid Body, Copy from Active. And this might take a second depending on how many objects you have. You can also get there by F3 and just search for Copy from Active. And now if we hit play, you might need to give it a second to kind of load. We have some physics and it's creating a pile for us right there. And you just want to let it play until it's in a position that you like. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. If you want it to stay like this now, with everything selected, go back to Object, Rigid Body, and you can do Apply Transformation. So if you go back to the first frame now, you can see that they're all in the same spot. And if you hit play, they will continue to simulate. And if you want it to stop simulating, you just want to go back to Object, Rigid Body, and then Remove. And now when you move forward on your timeline, these will all stay. They have no physics anymore, basically. And say, for instance, you want this to be a pile of a bunch of different objects. Basically, you would want to go back to your emitter. And instead of selecting a single object, you would want to change this to collection and then add a few different objects to a collection that you can reference for that. One other thing is that if you want to turn off the physics, you want to make sure that you apply the transformation first, because if you just try to remove it, you'll see they all snap back to their original position before they were simulated. So yeah, apply some materials to this and you can have a big shiny pile of trash. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing if you want to know when new videos come out. I'm also making an effort to make videos more frequently. I also have some things for sale on Gumroad, like a pack of barbed wire models and animated lightning models, as well as a bunch of free wallpapers. Links are always in the description. Thanks again for watching, and have a good one.